Hello, welcome to the Slick WIlly Fly. And what we're going to do now is a Slick WIlly variant on a muddler. Super fly for any brown, rainbow, any kind of trout fishing. I tie a saltwater variant. This is a freshwater variant. Tying up a few of these, they're going to go to Denver and to some good friends of ours. And let's talk materials real quick. So for this fly, I'm going to use a size 4 streamer hook. What's important for me with this streamer hook is I'm looking for a hook that's not too heavy a wire so that it penetrates when we get a bite. But at the same time, I need a hook that's got a long enough shank that gives me room to tie this fly. So this is a good saltwater, streamer hook for this fly. And yeah, let's think about what else am I going to use. I'm going to use 4 feathers from this little neck, this little rooster neck, which I think is a great color for this fly. I'm going to use brown deer hair for the front of the fly, for the head. I'm going to use 1 strand of Flashabou Mirage Opal. And I'm going to use a little bit of this beat up old Bucktail. I'm going to use a little tiny piece of this blended white with brown that I think looks great. And a little bit of gold hologram tinsel to wrap the body. And the last piece of the puzzle, which I don't see right in front of me, and the first thing I'm going to use, even before I change the camera angle, is I'm going to use a little bit of 0.20 lead thread. And like always, I'm not really sure how much I'm going to use. I'm going to use that much. It's probably going to be, I don't know, 8 to 10 wraps. And I'm going to put this on right now and put a little super glue on it to give it a chance to dry while I change the camera angle. Just like that. And I actually counted that, which I never do, and that was 9 wraps. And my location is going to be, I don't know, not at the midpoint, but not exactly at the end of the hook either. And I'm going to take a little bit of super glue, and I'm just going to touch it on both sides so that that gets nice and hard while we change the camera angle. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to look for Slick WIlly on Instagram. And let's go ahead and change the camera angle. Take a sip of our cocktail and tie this fly. Alright, so welcome back. So one thing that we didn't talk about was we never discussed the thread that I'm using. And what it is, it's a 6.0 Vivus in olive. So I'm going to go ahead and start behind the lead. Going to continue to give that a second to dry. And I'm going to go ahead and install my 2 feathers. So I have separated a couple of feathers about the same length. Right now they're facing in the same direction. And I'm going to go ahead and turn one so they're facing into each other. Just like that. And now I'm going to go ahead and put them, I want them at least the length of the shank. Probably more like a little bit more than the length of the shank. And I'm going to go ahead and put them on the hook. A couple of loose wraps. Double checking my placement, which I like a lot. Double checking that they're both the same length, which actually they're not for some reason. But they are now. Okay. and I can get them locked in nice and hard. there isn't any like reason to really cut off anything, but I go ahead and wrap at least to the back of the lead, and then I trim off. That gives me a good hard tying end point. I bring it back, and here I like to give this one wrap under the feathers. I like to make sure that those feathers stay in the nice and straight orientation that we have them in. So now the next part of this fly is to go ahead and tie in the body, the tinsel. And like I said, I have this holographic gold. Actually, before I put in the tinsel, I'm going to go ahead and put in one strand of the Flashabou Mirage Opal. And then we'll do the tinsel. So I take the Mirage Opal, I fold it in half, about as evenly as I can. Then I take it to the thread. Kind of fold it in half, about as evenly as I can there. And now I'm going to go ahead and lock this in right on top of the hook. That's going to be just perfect. Open up the loop, and it will fall right where we want it. Just like that. And now we can put on the gold tinsel. This gold is just in case this body should ever show through, which it might. But that's really the entire purpose of wrapping the body, just to give this a little bit more of a fishy body. So once I've started it and I have my thread out of the way, I could use the rotary function if I want, or I could wrap it the old-fashioned way like I'm doing here. And all I'm gonna do is I'm basically gonna wrap this to just beyond the lead. Don't really need to wrap farther than that. Capture it. A lot of times I like to fold it back and capture it again, because the tinsel is actually a very slippery material. And by folding it back and capturing it like that, you kind of really lock it in. Nice. So now we have our tail. We have our flash. Our flash is a little long. I don't want it longer than the tail. You can trim that up real quick. I like to do them individually. About the length of the tail, hair longer, hair shorter, it's all good. Something like that. So the next piece of material that I'm going to put on, I'm going to come to this bucktail that's really beat up. And I'm just going to find a section that has a little bit of white and a little bit of brown. Maybe more white than brown. I don't need a lot at all. You could take it from I can actually take it from the top. I mean, it doesn't really matter. But I don't need a lot. And like anytime I use any kind of bucktail, I take out all the shorties. And we take out all the crazy longs. Just like that. And the length of this material is that I want it to be about halfway. I'll restack some of this. I want it to be about halfway over the tail feathers. Not more than that. So that's my length. And now we're gonna go ahead and trim it. And the other thing that I really want to do with this bucktail is I want to keep it only on the top of the hook. I really don't want this to rotate over the entire hook. So I'm going to do one wrap only around the bucktail, like you've seen me do in other videos. Now I bring it to the hook, and now I do a wrap around the entire hook. And what that does is that will keep this bucktail only on the top of the hook, really nicely right on the top of the hook. And I can lock that in. Beautiful. That came out really good, really clean. And the last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give it a wrap under, because I want that bucktail to kind of have an upward angle, just like it does. I think that came out great. So now it brings me to my next two feathers. And again, I'm going to reverse one of them, put them together, do my best to get the lengths about perfectly even, which that doesn't look too bad right there. And we're going to present them. And what's my length? I want my length to be similar to the tail, if anything, a hair short of the tail. So I'm gonna go ahead and put them on. That looks about right. Couple of loose wraps, making sure I like where they're sitting, which I do. And now I can crank that nice and tight. And we can cut off the tag. So now it brings me to my deer hair. And I'm going to admit right now that while I'm not scared of deer hair, I love deer hair. I think it looks great. I love working with it. I know that there are people who are better than me at deer hair. They do a lot more work with deer hair than what I do. But I love it. So here's my deer hair. And I'm just going to work in small clumps. The first, for sure the first clump, maybe the first two clumps, not sure. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to stack, because these tips I'm hoping we never trim off. So I'm going to take this clump that I just cut off, about that size right there, and I'm going to put them in a stacker. Lost a few fibers going into the stacker. That's okay. And now, just like the name says, we're going to stack the deer hair. Okay. Now, this deer hair here might not spin the way we want it to. So we'll see. We might have to put a second clump on. But what my length is, I want my length to be, these tips should be not as long as the original deer hair that we put under the feathers. I would say about halfway up those. So I'm going to go ahead and give this 2 loose wraps right where it's sitting. And I'm going to try and work it around the hook. Just like that. Using my fingers, working it all the way around the hook. Now I'm going to hold that as good as I can as I draw this tight and flare out the remaining deer hair. And that came out really kind of great. Wiggle my thread through and push back. I have this little homemade push tool, and I'm just gonna stack the deer hair as best as I can. And the tighter you stack this deer hair, the better this fly will look. So get it all pushed to the back, put a couple wraps right in front, and now I'm going to cut another clump. Now this clump I'm not going to stack. It doesn't really matter because it's going to get trimmed. So a similar size clump will work. And I'm going to go back to the whole less is more that you've heard me talk about. Again, we're removing all the shorts. And any crazy longs, it doesn't really matter because all this is going to get trimmed. And all I'm going to do is put it on the hook, a couple of loose wraps. And again, I'm going to try and distribute somewhat, but when I pull this tight now, that whole entire clump should want to spin. And then I just kind of start bringing some back, wiggle through that, start bringing some back, wiggle through that, and get my stacker and try to stack this back. And start wondering if there's even room for any more deer hair, which doesn't really look like it. Maybe now I could put in a little whip finish. That came out good actually. All right. So now the last thing left to do is to trim. And remember, like I've said before on other videos where we trim softly, trim slowly, because once you start cutting, whatever you cut, you cannot put it back on the hook. So normally everyone uses a more flexible razor, a two-sided razor that you can bend, and it's by far better, but I don't have a sharp one. So I'm using a straight razor, and I'm just gonna take this very slow. And you see how easy it is to trim. I like to give it an outward angle when I do this. And once I've got a good amount of the trimming done, which I'm getting there now, I like to finish with my scissors so I don't overdo it. which is pretty easy to do actually. So now I just take out the scissor and I come in here and I carefully remove the ones that I want to remove. That first clump of deer hair that I put on that I stacked, those I don't want to trim off. Those I want to leave. And I think that came out perfect. It's not a very big muddler. I wasn't looking for a big muddler. The more deer hair you have, the more this fly will want to float. That's why I put on the lead. I want this fly to ride just below the surface. You can see the gold body shining through. I think this fly came out spectacular. I love it. That's a great little muddler. So this fly is gonna head out to Denver here soon, and hopefully he'll be sending me some fish pictures. Alright, so welcome back to Slick WIlly Fly. So that's a great little fly right there. It has a little bit of flash. It has, it's gonna have great action with these feathers, and the deer hair. It's just gonna look great in the water. I've caught some beautiful browns on these muddlers, and I think that particular muddler right there is just gonna swim great. It's gonna swing. This fly you can drift it, you can swing it, you can strip it in. You know, there's so much you can do with this. This will work great in still water lakes. It's just a great fly. So I'm looking forward to sending it. I'm looking forward to getting some pictures. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to look for Slick WIlly Fly on Instagram and having a cocktail with me, because fly tying is supposed to be fun. See you on the next video.